Hey, it's all with another video, and today we're quickly going through what sounds like one of the main features coming in the upcoming 11.1.7 patch, these combat assist tools built into the UI, and I'll do some commentary on that as well as what's happening in the future, the far future, with add-ons in World of Warcraft. If you don't mind, like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, and catch me when I'm streaming. This was all covered in a lengthy interview with Hazzikostas by Dratnos and Max, their notable folk from the high-end gamer community. The interview was very, very good, actually. I recommend giving it a listen because it covers developer philosophies when it comes to combat at a high level, although that tends to trickle down to player behavior across all of the different skill levels and preferences. I'm just going to be here to give the short version, I hope, of what's coming soon, and of also what's happening over the course of possibly multiple patches or even expansions. In patch 11.1.7, two features are coming. One is a rotation assist system. They're visual aids to tell you what button on your rotation you ought to press next. The second is what's basically one button gameplay, as in we can button mash a single key to pull off a full-ish rotation. Ian wasn't shy about name dropping popular add-ons that already help with this, and basically Blizzard's picking it up. The intent, unlike the current set of add-ons, is more in favor of accessibility. It's a way to learn if we're not accustomed to, say, like the regular evolution of our classes and specs. They also acknowledge there are players who like World of Warcraft, they like being a part of it, but the combat side of it, it's like not their focus. So these kinds of players, they can easily go out and about in the world doing outdoor content or delves or other solo adventures and so on, and enjoy easier combat. According to Ian, the tools will adjust depending on the situation you like if you're doing single target versus AoE stuff, it'll acknowledge your spec and your talent selection as well. He also mentioned there'd be a small penalty to the global cooldown when the one button option is enabled. Now, personally, I don't think that's entirely necessary, although I might get some pushback from you folks. The dependence on a one button rotation that can't exactly improvise in the moment-to-moment gameplay, I mean, it's already pretty suboptimal by design, I feel. Although, we gotta wait till we get our hands on it. But I just have a feel that during test, if this penalty does feel noticeable enough, folks are going to say so. Other games like Final Fantasy XIV, they do sport a longer global cooldown between abilities, and they're doing just fine, but that's also their only option too. It's probably the better play though to at least put this, the thought of this increased global cooldown, into our heads now, and then have it in the peak hour at first, and then adjust it, as opposed to not having it and then adding it at the end of the test cycle. One thing that wasn't addressed though was how this combat assist tool, notably the one button thing, how that's going to work while we level. Now, I imagine it's going to work seamlessly, where buttons will just be added into the rotation thing as we level up and apply talents. I do have a counterpoint though. Leveling itself is kind of borked. Even before heirlooms and other bonuses, we can sort of one or two shot enemies with ease. So a rotation helper here, I'm not sure if it'd be helpful. Even at max level, it doesn't take more than a few casts or globals to defeat most, but of course not all mobs, especially at low item level. So either the combat as a whole across World of Warcraft needs to be slower somehow, or in practice, we just accept that a one button macro isn't very useful until we reach a certain middle ground between a spot where mobs are dying too fast or the macro failing to be effective, as in you're doing too high level content for your rotation to the auto rotation to really work very well. The hopeful viewpoint, though, is this is part of an ongoing approach to just make the game feel more welcoming at the start. Allow folks who are brand new to World of Warcraft to play the game in an easier way, I guess, or at least to have these systems here as a learning tool, or training wheels. Okay, I'm mashing one button and seeing which abilities do what, and then if I want to, I can move up and use the combat assist options to guide me through which button to work best, and then I can adjust the buttons on my bar and slowly gain the muscle memory needed, and eventually I'll achieve a level of mastery and I can take off these training wheels, focus more on the combat and encounter design around me, because now, at least with the buttons, I'm used to what's going on. The one concern that I have is, again, with leveling. Players might be using this tool while leveling if it's possible, and not really be fully conscious of the added buttons they're pressing or not pressing because combat ends too fast. It sort of threatens a dependence on this tool, and as an example, like by the time they do hit max level and want to start weaning away from it, they might find themselves overwhelmed by the number of abilities there actually are. I mean, okay, at least they'll know like the first 2 or 3 buttons for sure though, right? But that's going to take a lot of feedback from players in the upcoming PTR. And there's the ongoing question of if this will lead towards a console version of World of Warcraft in the future. Blizzard has taken on that question numerous times, and each time they've said something to the effect of there are no plans, but they're just not closing the door on it entirely. So someday we're going to go through with it, and then the folks who've been waiting 20 years will be like, dude, see, I told you, I've been saying this the whole time. I think this is just like I think this is just one step out of many that needs to happen in order to eventually make WoW feasible on console. You know, part of it being how locked in we are with add-ons, which they also talked about in this interview. Like I said, their conversation on add-ons was mostly philosophical. There's nothing being actually announced yet. Only, you know, they just kind of discussed high-level intentions and what I shouldn't even call a roadmap, just like a vision of how they would like to move going forward, while of course inviting you all in for conversation and feedback. So first, Ian made it very clear they don't intend to touch add-ons that are cosmetic or just related to quality of life. Specifically, they're not going to do anything with the likes of, you know, LUI or layout add-ons. You know, folks can still track all the things and get help with professions. They can track, you know, events that are happening and assist with those. What world quests have gold? The way that we do quests or transmog roulettes. You know, none of that stuff is being effective. We're fine. The focus of this conversation was related to encounter assistance add-ons that help with combat at the more competitive level, like, you know, mythic raids and higher level keys, though of course folks at every skill also use these add-ons. I'm not doing the interview justice, but what they want to do is approach the dependence of encounter assist add-ons in multiple ways. One way is with the encounter design altogether. At the moment, players rely on add-ons to instantly communicate with the team, like who's being affected by a certain thing, what to do, and like where to go in like a second. Normally that's impossible to communicate in real time. So one example of new encounter design is very simple. They could just take a mechanic like that and they just need to increase the time needed to execute that thing. So at first it sounds like, okay, maybe they're just trying to make WoW easier or like dumbed down, but the intent is more like they want people to be able to execute these mechanics with human reaction, not add-on reaction, thus lessening the dependence on said add-ons. So that's like step one, is to make the game accessible for the human brain, I guess. During Dragonflight, they tried a thing called private auras. They were trying to restrict what high-end raiders could see, but the raiders still figured it out anyway, and they used add-ons or weak auras or macros or whatever, and they were able to still use, you know, assistance. It was just more annoying to do. So the approach is going to be different. Alter the encounter design philosophy to be more forgiving with the timing, or lessen the dependence till players can mostly rely on muscle memory and pings and other non-add-on communication. So another example, like sometimes players are randomly assigned and need to go to certain spots in a fight while a bunch of other mechanics are going on. So the newer approach might be, okay, let's just have fewer of these mechanics simultaneously going on, or to allow those certain spots to be occupied by any player. It's not randomly chosen, so the team, the raid leader, or whoever, they can plan, they can assign people they can rely on to handle these. They want to make encounters still feel hard, he said, just not as complex. Now, the impression I had as a heroic-only raider is, okay, cool, are they going to make like mythic fights a little bit more like heroic raid fights in terms of complexity, but just more impactful? And if so, what's that going to do with the difficulty of heroic fights? Because personally, again, this is just me, I think they work out great. Like for the most part, outside of timers, I don't need add-ons for like guiding people at all. But maybe future mythic raids or high-level keys, you know, maybe they'll still have a lot more going on, you know, well beyond my skill level and reaction time, but it'll still be, you know, doable at human speed. They also want to add something like deadly boss mods or bigwigs, that kind of style of improvement to World of Warcraft as well. Now this sounded pretty cool. Like Ian went as far as to say like they'll include something like showing the timers of when things happen in the dungeon journal and other useful information. Now I do my raids semi-blind, so this isn't a feature I'll ever care to use, but especially for pugs who can be very demanding of pre-existing knowledge and experience, the tool can be there for people who want to use them. And these changes aren't limited to raids either. Again, their long-term plan is to create better visual and audio aids to better identify for players when mobs become like a priority target. So here's the third example. Like if multiple casters are in a group and one of them is doing an especially deadly cast on top of the other mobs also doing a cast, okay, maybe the nameplate or the cast bar might have a different color, or the mob will have a distinctive color or highlight or animation to make the cast stand out better. However, Ian did point out that at the tail end of the UI and encounter design changes, that's when they'll finally start snipping away at some of the information provided to players as it is now. He wasn't super specific, but he pointed out how add-ons can pull up combat information in real time and then make a quick calculation and then communicate these to the entire group in like an instant. So again, they intend to take away the complexity that requires add-ons that do this thinking for them with new design approaches and the UI improvements, and then take away that information that those add-ons read. But again, so far there's no timeline. There's no clear end of the road, and this interview is just the start of discussions. I mean, I guess we didn't get to this point with add-ons overnight, and we shouldn't just wean ourselves off like that fast either. Personally, I'm not affected by these in the slightest. Like, I don't play at this level again, but I hear enough from folks who are dependent on add-ons regardless of skill or playstyle that it's gone too far that while they may not want to use add-ons, they feel like they're being forced to do that. And if WoW can create an experience that's more playing the game than playing an add-on, hey, I'm all for it. Meanwhile, I think the combat assist tools are a great learning tool for new players and even veterans. Like, how many of us have near max level characters from a bunch of expansions ago, but we have no idea how to play them and we don't feel like leveling up a new one and learning from scratch? With this tool, we can hop right in and give our class a spin without having to look at a guide first in order to, get a feel of it. Guides ought to be for refining our skill and not just starting out, right? Anyway, those are my thoughts. A link to the interview is in the video description, and I'd love to hear what you think. Please like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage. Catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.